Hey everybody, this is DM Mike, and this is it. This is the last tips for Hoard of the Dragon Queen for Chapter 8. And, kind of like Chapter 7, here's my main tip. Skip it. Okay, so this really depends on, as you as a DM, do you like dungeon crawls? Do your players like dungeon crawls? If that is the case, then there is nothing here for you. You can move along. Just turn off the video.
I'm leaving.
But if you want something a little bit different and you kind of want to pull back from this, maybe you're like me and you're looking at it going, too much, Hoard of the Dragon Queen, too much. Well, then maybe this video is for you. All right, so here's what I did. I'm going to refer to my notes, as always, because I can't memorize this crap. But here's some of my notes here. Chapter 8. Now, you could break Chapter 8 into two pieces, Parnast and the castle itself, right? So you can break these apart. Now, for the Parnast section, kind of ran it almost as is, little micro changes here and there. The characters stayed in Parnast overnight, got their full rest in, but also were ambushed there because at this point the cult knew they were there for various other reasons covered in the campaign diary will not be covered here. But there was a trap, and they were going to be ambushed at some point, right? So Parnast, I think you can, no matter what you do, you can run it pretty much almost verbatim in the book, right? Minus a few things here and there. But we always do that as DMs, right? So we change things up.
Johnny, what do you make out of this?
This? Well, I can make a cap, or a brooch, a pterodactyl.
But here's the only thing I changed, and this was covered in the Wyvern Assault maps and also one of the campaign diaries, is that from Parnast to the castle, I did this entire Wyvern combat, aerial combat in the air. So I guess one of my first tips then, as you roll into Chapter 8, I think it is more exciting for the characters to be on those Wyverns, going through a trench or going through whatever, and pursuing and chasing the castle. And they also are pursued by cultists riding Wyverns, and you have this huge aerial combat. So for me, for the sake of energy and fun and drama, I thought it was really cool to have that aerial combat happen. And you can make up your own kind of rules, right? I mean, I had skill checks against my players. I had wind shear that caused problems, all kinds of stuff. And that's all covered in the campaign diaries, right? So anyway, I recommend let the castle leave and let the players catch up with it. Let it get way out there, right? Like it's moving, Let the players catch up with it and have a great time with aerial combat on Wyverns, fighting against cultists, and making their way to the castle, okay? I think it'd be a great time. Now from there, I kept the energy up by having two more encounters inside the castle, right before we get to the main event. I had them have an attack on, or an encounter there on the landing pad, and you can see that in the tabletop simulator videos, as well as the campaign diaries that go a little bit more into detail about that, but I had all the cultists rushing out on the landing pad trying to kill them. And then from there, they fought even more inside the hallway, where they had another encounter. They were kind of mowing through them, right? These are the cultists, they're not high ranking, they're just there to, soften them up a little bit. And from that point on, that's where they met Blagothkus and Escarota, and a deal was made, and they decided to go in two different directions. As you can see, I went right to the main combat after those just few little skirmishes. I didn't spend a lot of time doing a lot of things, anything else. I didn't do a dungeon crawl. Now, if you want to do a dungeon crawl, my advice there is to thin the herd. There is so much ridiculous stuff hanging around this castle. I'm not entirely sure why Blagothkus is allowing so much weirdness in his castle with trolls and vampires and all kinds of stuff just hanging around. My quick advice there is if you want to run it, great. Just thin the herd. A lot of people got rid of the vampire. I would say pull the trolls away. Just kind of, just let it be the cultists and kobolds primarily, and of course the big baddies. I think at this point, less is more, right? That sounds like a lot that I just gave you, right? But it happened really, really fast, and it kept the energy and the feeling up of the game as we're nearing the end. I mean, like, video games do this, movies do this. They keep that energy up like the last reel of the film, right? They're just trying to get all the excitement built up, and that's what I was aiming for. So I would suggest that to you. If you cut the dungeon crawl, get right to the most important elements, and have it be full of energy and fun. So what I had happen was Blagothgus and his giants took care of Linathan. There is a decision there to make. Now, I guess another tip there is I got rid of Linathan. I'm sorry, I got rid of the White Dragon Glahazael or whatever it is, and just stuck in Linathan. I felt like that was a little more interesting because they had met him in the first chapter, and to have his presence there just added some flavor. In my campaign, how I'm running to Hoard of the Dragon Queen is my players can't just go attack a dragon. You need special equipment, you need armor that's resistant, and you also, which will come later in the game, they'll need dragon lances. They'll need special crafted weapons to do this. And Linathan is just too powerful. He's too big, he's too powerful. He would have crushed and killed them immediately. So to heighten that drama, I had them, split up, and the giants take care of that. And of course, you watch the campaign diary, you'll see how I ran that as far as like how I inserted radio dramas into that. But anyway, let me look at my notes here. I got my notes here. I used Thayan warriors, so I took a lot of the cultists out in the final battle. And the final battle for me was battling Asbaroth and Rezimir in Wrath's chambers. Wrath had left. Wrath was not going to stick around for the final combat. And I would suggest that too for you. Wrath's a high-ranking individual. He's not going to hang around to try to finish off some troublemakers, right? He's going to leave it to most likely his apprentices, and also if Rezimir's still alive, for them to deal with it, because they've been dealing with it since chapter 1. Let them deal with it. Wrath, you go and take care of business somewhere else. So to wrap up little incidentals here. Yes, I gave him the dragon mask. I felt like that was appropriate. I did not use Hazawazarin, whatever that sword is that Rezimir had. I felt like that was just too powerful. That's a legendary weapon. It belonged elsewhere. I did not give them control of the castle. I know some people think that's a great idea, some don't. We're all on the fence on it. I felt like it was moot. And there's complications that happen in Rise of Tiamat once you even give them the castle. They almost have to give it up, or there's fights, and there's different things that happen, and all the dragons that come later on. It just actually creates problems, if you ask me. So, and also I kind of felt like Blagothgus is just not going to give up his castle. What I had happen at my end was he told the characters he would take them to anywhere they wanted to go, and that he was going to go back to the Ordning. I think I may be using my terms wrong, but he's going to go talk to the giants and really potentially become an ally. So they built an ally out of this with the giants on their side. So that's how that's the route that I took, right? So I didn't give him the castle or anything. But any other magical items from Parnas or even Chapter 7 were moved into Wrath's room. And of course, like I've said, you can move those to anywhere, really. Rise of Tiamat, you can just, put them anywhere. But that's really about it, guys. It was really trimmed down. All right, so let's take a moment here and let's do a quick recap of all of this, right? Because in trimming down Chapter 8, I've probably made it a little more complicated in some ways. But let's go ahead and recap. I'm going to refer to my notes here. All right, the first one is, run Parnas as normal. Maybe there'll be little tweaks here and there, but for the most part, Parnas plays out how Parnas plays out, right? 2, in connection to Parnas, is to have the castle leave, whether it's night or day, whatever, have it leave, and I would throw in a wyvern encounter, them flying in the air, having the cultists come after them, having aerial combat, and you can make up all the rules you want for that. Mine were pretty simple, but yet at times were ridiculously complex, but there's a better way of doing this. But using wind shear and skill checks, different things like that, animal handling, things of that nature, can go a long ways. It can be a lot of a lot of fun to do as they're flying after the castle. Next one is I skipped, of course, 99% of the dungeon crawl. I got it down to just a few final skirmishes. I wanted them to feel like they just couldn't walk into the castle, right? That wasn't going to happen, so there had to be some resistance, right? The next thing is a little thing I did was replace the White Dragon in the castle with Linathan, really more for flavor, and because it also worked really, really well with my radio dramas that I was using during combat. Plus, I think it was just interesting having Linathan there. The White Dragon they don't really have any kind of connection with, but having Linathan there really required or helped build some, tension and some flavor. Next, I replaced a lot of those weird encounters because I've got mine down to just a very few encounters. Well, the main event, they fought against Rezimir and Asbaroth, and of course they weren't just going to fight against just those two. So I threw in Thayan warriors, and you can find more about those. I'm sure you can Google it and find everything you need. But I got those out of the Yawning Portal, one of the adventures there, and they're more like guards for red wizards, and I thought they were perfect. Now, I beefed them up a little bit, changed a few things, gave them a little more AC, more hit points, and strong weapons and whatnot. But for the most part, that's what they fought, and they were actually pretty darn effective. And speaking of which, I also, in my last encounter, removed Wrath. Again, he's a pretty high up guy. He's not going to stick around and deal with the peons. give it to the subordinates, right? So he left it to Rezimir, who's been dealing with him enough already, and Asbaroth, who was, in my campaign, more of his apprentice, and wanted to make sure that, really left it up to him to take care of the problem. So Wrath is gone, and Asbaroth and Rezimir were there to deal with the heroes. And also, finally, really, I did not give my players the castle. I did not give my players the Black Sword. But I did allow them to have the Dragon Mask and anything else, that would have been scattered around the castle is going to be in Wrath's room. Again, it's just, I think it was too powerful, too strange for those things to be there. Having the castle does present some problems. Really not just for Rise of Tiamat, but long term, I think. Flying castle is cool, right? No problem with that. I think if it was more homebrew, I might do something like that. But it's just, I'm just trying to run these things from point A to point B, and it does create some issues. So guys, that's all I have. As you can see, I cut, nixed, and chopped all kinds of stuff, and really the only reason for that was to push the cinematic feel, the high energy, and the last bits of drama to, on a volume of 0 to 10 up to a 12, just crank it up so we could get to that final confrontation without spending weeks and hours slowly, mind-numbingly going through a dungeon crawl. All right, just my table. May not be yours, but just my table. And if you are going to run this, again, I would suggest just to maybe trim it. Just get rid of some of that stuff, because it's a lot of weird creatures just hanging around for apparently no reason. So anyway, guys, that's it. Those are my tips. I hope they help. If you've decided to nix a lot of the dungeon crawl, maybe this will just give you some ideas and bouncing off points. But that is it. I've got nothing else. Again, there'll be no tips for Chapter 4 or 5. We skipped those. We kind of homebrewed them in a way because of Frulon becoming a hero and not a villain anymore. So the next tips will be covering Rise of Tiamat. And we hope to play in the next couple months or so. There's a lot of prep and stuff to do. Plus, I want a break. All right, guys, that's it. Thank you for watching. I hope all these tips have helped. And you know what? I'll see you in the next one.
I'm leaving.